Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, guys, we're going to do just this brief touch on this asteroid that some people are buzzing about. So, there is an asteroid that's going to fly by us at 0.03 lunar distance. Yes, that is a close shave. In fact, at that small a distance, you got to say it's certainly possible it could come in, but the good part is it's somewhere between 12 and 27 feet in diameter. At least that's what they tell us. Again, this is going to be coming by on January 26th at 2117 UTC. What's that? Plus or minus 2 hours and 22 seconds for? Why do they put that in there? 222 duality. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you always look for these clues with these guys. So, close call? Absolutely. Thankfully, this thing is not, half a mile across, because then everybody would be sweating bullets.
I know, then we would be really, really, really nervous. But, it's just it's a little guy, and hopefully it's just going to burn up and be a nothing burger, but definitely something to watch.
And I'm not one to put it by the powers that be to put something like this out there and then use some sort of technology, and there was impact, and oh my gosh, did you see what happened? That type of thing. And here we are saying, well, it must have been that asteroid that was coming by, right? And again, you can't put anything past the power structure on this planet. And this is basically from the USGS. Yes, the GS. This is your highest hazards in the U.S., continental U.S., for earthquakes. Now, this should be updated because I think Oklahoma would have a little bit more. There's nothing showing over really here. There's been some significant ones over here because of the fracking, you idiots. Not you guys, the USGS, and all those are involved in laying all the landmines of fracking everywhere that we look. Now, you see the bullseye here. We all expect California to be pink and red at your highest levels of hazard for quakes in Washington and Oregon. And there are some other little areas like you might not recognize, the Charleston area, the low country of South Carolina. Oh, yeah, there was a big event there in the 1870s, I believe, if I'm remembering right, or 1880s. Well, we'll find it. I think I have another map up here that has the date on it. Well, actually caused liquefaction of the sandy soil. And if you ever go to Charleston, you look at the church, notice the church steeple on Church Street, named after that church that's crooked still from that big quake, which happened, about 70 years after the big ones in the New Madrid, and ones are plural. So as you see, this zone right here, we do have Missouri, we have Arkansas, we have the northernmost edge of basically northwestern Mississippi, we have Tennessee, we have Kentucky, and you even have over here the border of Indiana in this zone, Illinois. This is a curious one because we had this two eclipses that go just about over precisely the area of the New Madrid. August 21st, 2017, remember that well. April 8th, 2024. Now, two eclipses, as we talked about this many, many times, that feel like a marker. Absolutely, they feel like a marker.
Oh, they sure do, and just there are no coincidences, they do have ways to set things up. There is a hierarchy of information that's going on, and I remember when it passed over in 2017, my entire body got chills for probably at least an hour. I mean, there was some major changes in vibration when that first one happened, and boy, there were so many things that happened after that, and then that volcano went off in Hawaii, and it seems like the major disasters hadn't stopped since then. They're just ongoing.
And again, that occurs in this timeline of this particular big event, the Pluto return of the USA, which was again February, all the twos, 22nd, 2022. You have the beginning of the Pluto return, which finishes in 2024, November. So, this having the Pluto return inside it, there's no coincidence here. This is all, it's all part of the great play that we are all actors acting this big drama out. It's been said that on average, a total solar eclipse can be seen from the same place only once every 375 years. Methodology used by whoever calculated this number is unknown, and it's debatable whether there can even be a definitive methodology for such a calculation. For instance, how many points on Earth do you use to arrive at an average number of years? But regardless of the math, there's no denying the fact that a total solar eclipse is a relatively rare event for any given place. So for the area to get not one, but 2 solar eclipses in just 7 years, 7 years, where did I hear that? 7-year tribulation, there you go, is truly a remarkable occurrence. An area spanning parts of Missouri, Illinois, and Kentucky will be the nexus of the next 2 solar eclipses to occur in the U.S., one of which obviously has already happened. Back on August 21st, 2017, I was in Sarasota, Florida for that event. And then April 8th, 2024 is the second one, because the 2017 eclipse travels across the country from northwest to southeast. And the 2024 eclipse makes its way through the nation from the southwest to the northeast. The 2 paths cross each other and create a zone of overlapping totality of almost 9,000 square miles, or roughly the size of New Jersey, as we see that right here. So again, this way and then this way. Now, if you look at this, and one of the things, again, that I was just pointing out before, this does exit the U.S. over here at this point, which is Charleston. That's where the big quake happened in Charleston. The New Madrid quakes, 1811, 1812. What is this? This is Cascadia. The big 9.0 they said hit in 1700. Isn't that curious? Where the path of the sun's going over really some of the most dangerous seismically active zones in the U.S. Then this one comes up, and we've seen major ones in Mexico City, which is a little bit off the mark, more towards the east here. But we have seen major quakes along this coast and in this area of Mexico. And it travels right through, deep through the heart of Texas. Oh, yeah. Comes right across, goes right into the New Madrid area again, and then up into the St. Lawrence, which, again, you will every now and then see along the St. Lawrence waterway up here some small, curious quakes. So very, very interesting for sure. When we zoom in, you can see here's St. Louis, Missouri, and you can see this Carbondale, Marion, Cape Girardeau. This is like your X point, your heart of it. When we look outward again, we're talking about that New Madrid. I mean, this is a different area because it is on the Craton. When this thing goes, you feel it everywhere. And you could see the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. You could see in red the area of destruction, and then orange the area that felt it. Well, look at the size of that impact of that 1811 New Madrid, and there you go, 1886 Charleston. Again, it all depends on location. You can see the LA area there as well. The energy travels far and wide when it's in this area. And so, it's fascinating to look at the history. This is, and there's not exact agreement on this because, there wasn't a heck of a lot of people living in the area, thankfully, at that particular time. But that catastrophic damage zone, it is pretty big. It is pretty big. As you see, this would encompass all the way down into Little Rock over here. And this would encircle Springfield and certainly St. Louis, and then coming on across, covering, basically better than half of Tennessee. Well, better than half of Kentucky, probably 2/3 to 3/4 of Tennessee, some of Alabama, northern Mississippi, as well as a really good chunk of Illinois and Indiana. Yeah, you would even get pretty good shaking all the way up in Iowa, even into Ohio. Yeah, this was a series of big ones. That now, if instead of having, as they were saying, there was maybe 800 settlers right in the heart of this zone at that time, now we have many more people in that zone, and you got to wonder how built up to earthquake code they are. Geological data shows that several faults in the region have slipped and deformed in the New Madrid seismic zone. Ground surface in some areas lifting it up, e.g. Lake County Uplift, or lowering it, like Reelfoot Lake, relative to surroundings, thus affecting the flow of the Mississippi River. For example, the Reelfoot Scarp is a 10-meter high hill formed by at least 3 major earthquakes on the Reelfoot Fault in the last 2,400 years. Predominant style of recent faulting in the New Madrid region is strike slip. So, again, it is also the type of quake that can give more damage. It depends on the type. Horizontal movement nearly parallel to the course of the Mississippi River. Horizontal slip along strike slip faults is difficult to see at the ground surface unless a stream crosses the fault nearly perpendicular to it. Cindy and I, we got to experience 2 that were in the 7 range in Nevada, as we were just across the border from the area, China Lake and that whole area over there, and then we felt the big Tonopah one as well. And I swear it felt like there was 2 or 3 Bigfoot outside just trying to play ping pong with our camper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you're in a little camper like that, boy, you feel everything. If the wind is blowing hard, you're going to know about it. So if you could imagine an earthquake, that was pretty crazy. But I mean, I look at this and I see the heart of the country. This is like a heart chakra situation we have going on here. It's a blow to the heart. It's trauma, so we see physical trauma. So there's something significant here, when we're dealing with different dimensions and different areas and different understanding. It's not just like the physical part of the earth. It's more there. It almost feels like something about this area is targeted because of its consciousness, like the heart chakra.
Well, as we know, they want to shift power from NATO and the U.S. and now send it to the Far East and have a totally new power center, so to speak. This shook everything from Charleston, South Carolina, D.C. It shook church bells up in Boston. And it is basically something that could happen any particular time. 3 big quakes occurred, 1811, 1812. They are among the great earthquakes of known history, and they took place near New Madrid, Missouri, magnitude of 8.0 higher on the Richter scale. Well, it's all kind of debatable, because here you see this is from the New Madrid Historical Museum, and the Great New Madrid earthquakes began on December 16th, 1811. On that day, 3 quakes estimated to have been anywhere from 6.5 to 7.7 in magnitude struck the region, and what would be a 3-month natural disaster that would impact a huge chunk of North America. Almost 2,000 earthquakes hit in a 3-month period, caused upheaval in the region that would last for years. The New Madrid area still experiences regular shakes and is at risk for large quakes in the future. And so, again, the damage would be catastrophic today. It wasn't built up. And that's part of, the saving grace, so to speak. There wasn't many structures. There were people that tried to escape the trees falling down on them because the trees were falling down all around them by getting on rafts and going out in the Mississippi River, only to be faced with tsunamis on the Mississippi River.
Just everything just turning around on you. That's scary.
Yeah, so again, this sequence of 3 very large earthquakes, usually referred to as the New Madrid earthquakes after the Missouri town that was the largest settlement on the Mississippi River between St. Louis, Missouri and Natchez, Mississippi. So Natchez is, well, it was a pretty important water port, I should say, on the Mississippi. And again, the Mississippi briefly flowed in the opposite direction because of this. And you actually had, basically tsunamis going on in the Mississippi and currents. On the basis of the large area of damage, 600,000 square kilometers, the widespread area of perceptibility, 5 million square kilometers, and the complex physiographic changes that occurred, the New Madrid earthquakes of 1811 and 1812 rank as some of the largest in the United States since its settlement by Europeans. They were by far the largest east of the Rockies in the U.S. and Canada. The area of strong shaking associated with these shocks is 2 to 3 times as large as that of the 1964 Alaska quake, and 10 times as large as that of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Because there were no seismographs in North America at that time, at least that we know of, and very few people in this region, the estimated magnitudes of these series of earthquakes vary considerably and depend on modern researchers' interpretations of journals, newspaper reports, and other accounts of the ground shaking and damage. The magnitudes of the 3 principal earthquakes described below are the preferred values taken from research involved with producing the 2014 USGS National Seismic Hazard Map. So the first one, a 7.5, they estimate again, occurred at about 2:15 a.m. local time in northeast Arkansas on December 16, 1811. The second principal shock, a 7.3, occurred in Missouri on January 23, 1812. So again, the War of 1812, Napoleon, you have all these time frames, and we wonder, because some think that 1812-ish is an area of a time frame when we have a destruction of what we would call Tartaria actually happening, or at least part of the remnants of Tartaria. And, a great culling of the population going on. And it makes you wonder about this. Was this part of that bigger picture?
Yeah, I mean, when they have so many big things happening all at once and you have humans making these huge leaps, are they making large leaps in evolution? Is that when they, try to really get everybody all shaken up and then get everybody all sidetracked, and so they can't focus on anything? And boy, that certainly feels like that's the case here lately. Looking at things the way they are, it's just, I couldn't see it any other way. It just has to be so deliberate.
Yeah, and it just, there's so much about 1812. It's just one of those years that's fascinating. So, maybe that's something we could get into in a different video. But, just these time frames, and the Earth changes per se with different outbreaks. Like, again, we look to 1918 as a year that's curious, in that we had the Spanish flu, we had the end of World War I. And there's so many other things that are going on that we keep coming back to these same years in time. And there's this line of connectivity that I don't think we can see things clearly until maybe we're in a deep meditative state and something just pops and it comes to you. But again, that 64 Alaskan earthquake was very, very huge as well. So the first one was a 7.5, happened at 2:15 a.m. local time, Northeast Arkansas, December 16th, 1811. The second one, 7.3, Missouri, January 23rd, 1812. And the third, 7.5, February 7th, 1812, along the Reelfoot Fault in Missouri and Tennessee. The earthquake ground shaking was not limited to these principal main shocks, and there is evidence for a fairly robust aftershock sequence. The first and largest aftershock occurred on December 16th, 1811, about 7:15 a.m. At least 3 other large aftershocks are inferred from the historical accounts of December 16th and 17th. These 3 events are believed to range between 6.0 and 6.5 in size and to be located in Arkansas and Missouri. This would make a total of 7 earthquakes of magnitude 6.0 to 7.5 occurring in the period December 16th, 1811 through February 7th, 1812. In total, Otto Nutley reported more than 200 moderate to large aftershocks in the New Madrid region between December 16th, 1811 and March 15th, 1812. 10 of those that were greater than about 6.0. 100 were between 5.0 and 5.9, and 89 were in the magnitude range of 4. He also noted that about 1,800 quakes of 3.0 to 4.0 during the same period. And a large area of damaging shaking occurred. You know, it's just, we don't know what it would do if it hit in these times. Again, it would be obviously much, much more catastrophic than it was back in those days with all the building and all. When you look at what happened, you had sand blows, riverbank failures, landslides, and you had land that sunk, and some land, raised as well, slightly. It would have been just something that obviously would have claimed many, many lives in this time, had it happened in this time. And yet when we look to the 2 eclipses, it certainly feels like it's pointing towards the likelihood of something like that happening. And what Cindy and I have always felt, especially in the last several months, is that there's technology in play that's trying to trigger something major in the U.S. And I do feel that it would be Cascadia first, San Andreas happening shortly thereafter, or concurrently with the Great Cascadian Quake to come, which again was now 322. 323. I was going to say 322. Genesis 322 again. There's Skull and Bones 322. Well, 323 years. But actually, it might still be 322 years at this moment. I forget what the date was when it hit. The Great Cascadian one of 1700. I have to look that up. But interesting, is it not? All these things that we see. Huge waves on the Mississippi River overwhelmed many boats and washed others high onto the shore. High banks caved and collapsed into the river. Sandbars and points of islands gave way. Whole islands disappeared. Surface fault rupturing from these earthquakes has not been detected, was not reported. However, the region most seriously affected was characterized by raised or sunken lands, fissures, sinks, sand blows, and large landslides that covered an area of 78,000 to 129,000 square kilometers, extending from Cairo, Illinois, to all the way over to Memphis, Tennessee, and from Crowley's Ridge in northeastern Arkansas to Chickasaw Bluffs, Tennessee. Only 1 life was lost in falling buildings at New Madrid, but chimneys were toppled, log cabins were thrown down as far distant as Cincinnati, Ohio, St. Louis, Missouri, and many places in Kentucky, Missouri, and Tennessee. A notable area of subsidence that formed during the February 7, 1812 earthquake is Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee, just east of Tiptonville Dome on the down-drop side of Reelfoot Scarp. Subsidence there ranged from 1.5 to 6 meters, although larger amounts were reported. Other areas subsided by as much as 5 meters, although 1.5 to 2.5 meters was more common. Lake St. Francis in eastern Arkansas, which was formed by subsidence during both prehistoric and the 1811-1812 earthquakes, is 64 kilometers long by 1 kilometer wide. Coal and sand were ejected from fissures in the swampland adjacent to the St. Francis River, and the water level is reported to have risen there by 8 to 9 meters. That's like, 25 to 30 feet, basically, that it rose. Large waves, seiches, were generated on the Mississippi River by seismically induced ground motion deformations on the riverbed. Local uplifts of the ground and surface water waves moving upstream gave the illusion that the river was flowing upstream. Ponds of water were also agitated noticeably. Yeah, so this gets into a little bit more in depth into this. The Lake County Uplift, some 50 kilometers long, 23 kilometers wide, stands above the surrounding Mississippi River Valley by as much as 10 meters in parts of southwest Kentucky, southeast Missouri, northwest Tennessee. The uplift apparently resulted from vertical movement along several ancient subsurface faults. Most of the uplift occurred during prehistoric earthquakes. A strong correlation exists between modern seismicity and the uplift, indicating that stresses that produce the uplift still may exist today. Within Lake County Uplift, Tiptonville Dome, which is about 14 kilometers in width and 11 kilometers in length, shows the largest upwarping and the highest topographical relief. It is bounded on the east by 3-meter-high real-foot scarp. Although most of Tiptonville Dome formed between 200 and 2,000 years ago, additional uplifting deformed the northwest and southeast parts of the dome during the earthquakes of 1811-1812. So, again, this is something that feels like, we may very well be watching something like this occurring in modern times. And, all this talk gets me thinking about Quakies. Edgar Casey, Quakey. Edgar Quakey Casey. Yeah, that's a good nickname for him. He said that the central U.S. was going to rise slightly. As you see, this is his own map, April 1941. And here he writes on top of Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and says central area rises slightly. Great Lakes drain via Mississippi. So, does that mean that there's going to be no more Great Lakes? That they are literally going to drain into the Mississippi? Many people have interpreted this to be that the Mississippi gets to be so wide it basically separates the country in two. Accepting stable areas, entire east coast of U.S. sinks slightly. And we're talking about strike-slip type of faults here too. So everything on the east coast sinks slightly. Underwater, Charleston Bay, as you see where he wrote this out, everything but the high country of South Carolina looks to be kind of underwater here. And parts of Georgia as well. Atlanta, Georgia, a seaport. Wow. Florida stays still. Now, how in the world is that possible with Atlanta, Georgia being a seaport? Because, Atlanta is so far inland, unless there's just literally crumbling of the land. We had talked about the liquefaction, but it would have to be something so massive. To imagine Florida, which at the highest point, I think the highest points in Florida, there's just a little ridge that runs in the center of Florida that's maybe more than 150 feet. Most of Florida lies, 20 feet pretty much or less above sea level. So it's hard to imagine that this would all be inundated unless there was some sort of crumbling going on. And you see all the notes over here as well. All of this country drifting, and you have west of the fault stays still. And we had talked about California being an island in the past. Of course, again, when he was given this, 1941, that was 80 years ago plus. Timelines certainly, probably have changed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very, very difficult to get timelines because when you see something in that moment, it's on the timeline you're in. You're seeing the most prevalent timelines, but that doesn't mean that thing necessarily went away, but it could have definitely shifted, or it could have shifted to a different type of situation. So it is. I mean, that's probably one of the most difficult things is getting it, because time is not what we think it is. It's a construct. It's something that it exists in the ether. So it's hard to translate it into what we understand as time if that's not what it is. It's so confusing.
So again, when we look at the reach of these quakes, it was just expansive. Half the country, felt these, better than half the country. If you're talking about population, probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the country felt it. This was very, very huge, impactful event. So, is this speaking that there are great changes in the very, very near future ahead of us? As, basically April 8th, 2024 is but like about 15 months away or so. So we shall see, guys. What are your thoughts, feelings? Have you guys had any sort of visions, dreams, anything of the like, anything relating to this? Again, when you're looking for safe places, safe zones, where you want to be in these times, everywhere has a challenge. As we shared, you had the Four Corners area, which the Hopis say is a safe zone. Yet again, we've had drought, and certainly the geopolitical, I think, takes, front and center. And then again, if there is a war going on, where do you want to be? Where don't you want to be? There's so much to consider.
Indeed.
So again, good reason to listen and develop to that listen to that inner voice, develop the intuition, make contact with your guides, your angels, however it is that you do your spiritual practice. Cultivate that. Stay as free and clear from all the tainted foods, the GMOs, obviously the big FARMA, all those things make it harder for us to, develop that intuitive ability.
They sure do.
And as always, thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and also on Patreon. Couldn't do it without you guys over there. And then also do check out Medicinal Foods. There's a link on every video. Use coupon code EEA. It does give you a discount. Much love. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.